When I turned 17, my family walked out on me without a warning. All they left behind was a scribbled note that read, "You'll figure it out." Now, after all these years, they've decided they want to be part of my life again, because I'm a millionaire. So I took them to court. Back then, they just packed up and moved 2 states away without saying a single word to me. I remember coming home to find the place completely empty, like everyone had vanished into thin air. There was only that note waiting on the kitchen counter, the meanest thing I'd ever read in my life. "You'll figure it out." That was it. I stood there, trying to wrap my head around what I'd possibly done to deserve it. Maybe they finally got sick of pretending they cared about me, though, if I was honest, they'd never really tried that hard to pretend. When I was 13, I baked my mom a birthday cake all by myself. She barely glanced at it before calling it lumpy. At 15, I stayed up nights helping my brother cram for finals. He repaid me by calling me a know-it-all and slamming the door in my face. At 16, I handed my dad every penny of my paycheck so he could cover the bills, and later he yelled at me for mentioning it, acting like I was worthless. I was always good for something, just never good enough to be loved. My parents and my brother, my only family, left me behind without the decency to tell me. I didn't even find out where they'd gone until the landlord let me know the lease had been canceled early. I was given a week to pack up my life. For a few nights, I crashed at a friend's house. Then I ran out of places to go. My last option was to sleep in the back of a storage container I managed to rent with what little money I had left. I'd sneak into the YMCA to take a shower, eat peanut butter straight out of the jar 3 times a day, and use the library's computers to hunt for jobs, pretending everything was fine. Eventually, I landed a gig as a night shift server at a little diner. The manager was strict but fair, and she paid me cash under the table until I could get my ID sorted. Once, when I was about to pass out from exhaustion, she let me nap in the break room. I kept pushing through. I bought a cheap prepaid phone, saved every receipt, and taught myself about budgeting and setting goals by watching free YouTube videos. My first year on my own nearly broke me, but somehow I survived. Everything changed the day a diner regular offered me temporary work organizing office files. It paid triple what I was making. I didn't hesitate. That one job led to another, then another. I picked things up fast, always showed up early, and wasn't afraid to ask questions. By 22, I was freelancing full-time. At 25, I launched my own consultancy with nothing but a folding table and a borrowed laptop. 2 years later, I was overseeing a team of 5 contractors, running my own office, and landing clients I'd never dreamed of working with. By 29, I had become a millionaire in the real sense: money in the bank, no debts, a paid-off apartment, retirement savings, and decent health insurance. The first time my account balance hit 7 figures, I sat there and cried. Through all those rough years, my family never reached out. Not once. My brother's face did pop up in a suggested friends list online. He was married now, living in the same state where they'd disappeared. I stared at that screen a long time, wondering if he ever told his wife about me, if he said I'd run away, or just never mentioned I existed. Part of me thought hating them would be easier, but it wasn't hate. It was a sorrow so deep I couldn't name it. These days, I go to therapy because I want to stay whole. I've made a list of all the people who stepped up for me when they didn't have to: coworkers, classmates, strangers who showed me what real kindness is. Just last week, a podcast interview I did about surviving family estrangement blew up. It hit over 1 million views in 4 days. My inbox flooded with messages of support and people thanking me for saying the things they'd always felt. But one email stopped me cold. The subject line read, "You're still our daughter." It was from my mother. No apology, just a short note saying she'd listened to my story and maybe we could talk. Then came another email, this one from my brother. "We miss you. Can we fix this?" I sat there, staring at those messages, unsure what moving on even meant. Was it looking backward or forward? I didn't answer right away. I needed space to think. My therapist, Melissa, told me to give it at least a week. Let yourself feel whatever comes up. There's no hurry, she kept reminding me. So I tried. I focused on my work, hit the gym, ate dinner with friends. But those emails wouldn't leave me alone. I kept opening them, reading the words over and over, then closing them again. My mom's message felt cold, almost like she was writing to someone she barely knew. My brother's note was shorter but sounded more sincere. I couldn't get it out of my head. After 10 days, I decided to reply to my brother first. I kept it simple. It's been 12 years. What changed? I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. He wrote back in less than an hour. He said the podcast made him realize what they'd done. He reminded me he was only 15 when they left, that he hadn't had a choice, that he'd searched for me online a few times but never worked up the nerve to reach out. He told me he was proud of what I'd accomplished. I didn't fully believe it. If he'd cared that much, why wait until I was in the spotlight? I asked him straight out, His next message was longer. He admitted money was tight. My parents' business had gone under. His wife was pregnant again, and their medical bills were stacking up. My stomach turned. That was the real reason they'd reached out. I waited another week before I did anything. Then my mom sent another email with old family photos attached, pictures of me as a baby, us at the beach, me and Daniel building a snowman. Happy moments that felt like they belonged to someone else's story. At the end, she wrote, "We made mistakes. We want to make amends." I brought those emails from my family to my next session with Melissa. She reminded me that I was the one in charge now, that I could set whatever boundaries I needed, and that I didn't owe them a single thing. But she also said that finding closure, whether that meant reconciling or saying a final goodbye, might help me move on for good. I nodded like I agreed, but inside, I was torn in half. Part of me wanted to tell them all to stay out of my life forever. Another part of me was desperate to understand why they'd done what they did. And a small, foolish part still wished they could love me the way I'd needed back then. I decided to see my brother first, alone, no parents involved. We arranged to meet in a coffee shop in Chicago, sort of the halfway point between where we each lived. That morning, I flew in, checked into a hotel, and tried to calm down. I came close to canceling more than once, but at 2 o'clock I finally walked into that cafe and spotted him right away. He looked older than I remembered, heavier, hair starting to thin, but his eyes hadn't changed. When he saw me, he stood up, all stiff and nervous. I didn't hug him. We just sat across from each other holding our coffee cups, like two people who'd never met. The first 20 minutes were filled with awkward small talk about the weather, my flight, his drive-in. Then he started apologizing. "Ava, I'm sorry," he said in this shaky voice. "I was just a kid when it happened. I didn't realize what they were planning until it was too late. I was scared to go against them." I listened carefully, watching his face for any sign he was lying. He seemed sincere, but I'd been fooled before. Finally, I asked the one question that had haunted me since the day they left. "Why me? Why did they leave me behind?" He stared down at his cup. "They always said you were the strong one," he whispered. "The independent one. They thought you'd be okay without them. That you didn't need them the way I did." It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. I told him about the months I spent sleeping in a storage unit, living on peanut butter, showering at the YMCA, working night shifts when I was just 17. His face fell apart hearing it. "I didn't know," he said softly. "They told me you had a plan. That you were staying with a friend's family. That you chose to stay behind. All of it was lies." By the end, I didn't know how to feel. He really seemed sorry. He showed me pictures of his wife and kids, told me about his accounting job, asked about my business. To his credit, he never asked for money, and that almost surprised me more than anything. When it was time to leave, he hugged me. I let him, but I didn't hug him back. I just stood there with my arms hanging by my sides, feeling hollow. Back at the hotel, I called Melissa and told her everything. She pointed out that while my brother sounded regretful, he was still putting himself in the role of a victim instead of admitting he'd played a part in abandoning me. She was right. He was 15 back then, not 5, old enough to call, to email, to check on me at any point in the last 12 years. That night, my mom called. I hadn't given her my number, so Daniel must have passed it along. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice sounded older, rougher. As soon as I said hello, she started crying, telling me how proud she was, how she'd always known I'd make something of myself, how special I was. I let her talk until she ran out of words. Then I asked her exactly what I'd asked Daniel. "Why me?" Her answer was different. "We were drowning in debt, Ava. We couldn't afford to feed 3 people. We figured you were smart enough to survive on your own. We thought social services would step in and place you with a better family. We thought we were doing you a favor." I hung up without saying another word, blocked her number right away, threw my phone across the room, and buried my face in a pillow to scream. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my dad, our first contact in 12 years. There was no apology in it, just a long message about how hard their lives had been, how medical bills and failed businesses had ruined them, how Daniel's wife needed surgery, how they were about to be evicted. Then came the request. Would I help them out? Not a single question about my life. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. I forwarded it straight to Melissa with the subject line, and there it is. She called me right away, even though it was Sunday. We spent an hour talking about boundaries, about the difference between forgiving someone and letting them back in, about what it meant to help versus enabling them, about what I actually wanted and what I just felt pressured to want. By Monday, I'd made up my mind. I emailed my brother to say I appreciated meeting him, that I understood he'd been in a tough spot back then, and that I was open to building a relationship with him and his family, but under clear rules. No money, no loans, no support of any kind, and no contact with our parents unless they took real responsibility for what they'd done. His reply came fast and told me everything I needed to know. "I'm really disappointed in you, Ava," he wrote. "Our parents need help. Families are supposed to stick together. You're being selfish with your success." All those guilt triggers that installed in me as a kid lit up at once. I didn't answer. Instead, I booked an extra session with Melissa and bought a ticket to Bali. I needed to get far away to clear my head. 3 days later, Daniel called and left a voicemail. He apologized for the email, said he understood my decision, said he still wanted to have a relationship on my terms, promised to respect my boundaries. I played it twice, trying to decide if he meant it or was just changing his approach. I decided to give him one more shot, but with my guard up this time. I went to Bali anyway. Spent 2 weeks on the beach, hiking through rice fields, meditating, breathing. I needed that distance more than I knew. When I came home, there were 6 more emails from my dad, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't even bother opening them past the subject lines. I also had a text from Daniel asking if we could talk again. I agreed to a phone call, nothing more. The call started off fine. He apologized again for the pressure. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he told me. "I'm in therapy now too." I believed him. He sounded different, less defensive. We talked about his kids and my work, just normal stuff. But then he brought up that our parents were coming to visit him soon and asked if I'd consider meeting them for an hour in public. My chest tightened up. "I'm not ready for that, Daniel," I said. He tried to nudge me, but when I got quiet, he backed off. Afterward, I called Melissa. We had an emergency session that same evening. She helped me see that what scared me most wasn't seeing them. It was that part of me still longed for their approval. Still wished they'd love me. Still wanted to finally feel like I was enough. It felt pitiful, but it was the truth. I broke down in Melissa's office and cried for a solid hour. The next morning, Daniel texted again. He said our mom had been up all night sobbing after he told her I wouldn't see them. He added that our dad was already talking about driving out to my city whether I agreed or not. My chest tightened with panic. I blocked Daniel's number right away. Then I called my assistant and told her I'd be working from home that week. I ordered groceries to be delivered and basically holed up in my apartment like a scared kid hiding from a storm. On Wednesday, my doorman rang up to say there was a couple downstairs asking for me, refusing to give their names. My stomach sank. I knew exactly who it was. I told him flat out I wouldn't be seeing any visitors. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I let it roll to voicemail. It was my dad. His voice was tight with anger. "Ava, we drove 8 hours to come see you. You're acting like a child. We deserve a chance to explain." I deleted it without listening twice and powered off my phone. Thursday morning, I was jolted awake by pounding on my door. My heart was hammering. I crept to the peephole, and there they were, my parents, standing in the hallway like they had every right in the world to show up. "Ava, please," my mom called through the door. "We just want to talk." My dad's voice joined hers. "We love you. We're sorry." I didn't move. I sank to the floor with my back pressed to the wall, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. After what felt like hours, they finally left. I called building security right away and told them not to let those people up to my floor again. The guard sounded worried, asked if I wanted the police involved. I said no, just keep them out. When I hung up, I called Melissa. She showed up on her lunch break carrying a sandwich. She sat beside me while I cried some more. She reminded me I was allowed to have boundaries, that I didn't owe them a face-to-face meeting, that what they were doing wasn't love, it was harassment. After she left, I got an email from Daniel. He was furious. He said I'd humiliated our parents, that they were stuck in a cheap motel they couldn't pay for because they were desperate to see me, that his wife needed surgery soon and they'd been hoping I might help, that I was being cruel. I didn't even think about responding. Friday morning, I decided I had to get out of town before I lost my mind. I booked a flight to Portland to stay with my friend Rachel. She was one of the few people who had helped me when I was homeless, let me crash on her couch when I had nowhere else to go. She was the one person I trusted completely. I was throwing clothes into a suitcase when my phone rang again, another unknown number. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, the doorman called. He sounded uneasy. He said there was a woman downstairs who looked like she was having some kind of medical issue, and she was asking for me by name, claiming to be my mother. My stomach flipped. I told him to call an ambulance if she needed help, but that I wasn't coming down. He hesitated but agreed. An hour later, when I finally left, I checked the lobby carefully. There was no sign of them. I felt relieved but also horribly guilty. The doorman gave me this look as I passed. He told me the paramedics had come and taken her to Memorial Hospital. I nodded, mumbled a thank you, and hurried out to my Uber. At the airport, my phone rang again, Daniel's number. I almost let it go, but something made me answer. His voice was raw from crying. "Mom had a heart attack," he choked out. "She's in surgery." This is your fault for stressing her out. I hung up before he could say more. Called Melissa instead. She picked up on the first ring. I asked her if I was a terrible person. Ava, hear me, she said, her voice steady. You are not responsible for your mother's health. This feels like another manipulation. Get on your plane. Take care of yourself. So I did. I spent the weekend with Rachel. I told her everything. She remembered those first months after my family abandoned me, remembered how shattered I'd been. She was furious for me. They don't deserve a second of your time, she said as she poured me another glass of wine. Not after what they put you through. It felt like a relief to have someone so firmly on my side. Sunday night, my dad emailed. He said my mom was stable, that they'd put in a stint, that she'd be discharged on Tuesday. He ended with, she's asking for you. Don't you think you've punished us enough? I showed Rachel. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might sprain something. She said it was textbook guilt tripping. I knew she was right, but part of me still felt like it was somehow my fault. Monday, I flew home. When I got to my apartment, there were flowers sitting by the door. The card said, please call us. We're at the Holiday Inn until Wednesday. No apology, no respect for boundaries, just another demand. I tossed them straight down the trash chute. Tuesday morning, another text came in from an unknown number. It was a picture of my mom in a hospital bed, looking small and frail. The message read, she might not have much time left. Do you really want to carry this regret? My hands were shaking as I blocked the number. I called Melissa right away. She suggested I step away from social media, change my number, maybe stay with a friend again. I agreed. Called my assistant, told her I'd be working remotely for 2 weeks. I was stuffing clothes into a bag when my doorman called one more time. He said there was a young woman downstairs with a small child. She was claiming to be my sister-in-law. I felt cornered. Like no matter what I did, these people would never stop. I told the doorman to go ahead and let her up. I was tired of hiding and figured it was time to face whatever this was. The woman who knocked looked worn out, with big dark circles under her eyes and a little kid slumped asleep on her shoulder. I'm Rachel, she said in a soft voice. Daniel's wife. I came alone because I wanted to talk without all the family chaos. I hesitated, but stepped back to let her in. I offered her some water, which she took with both hands like she hadn't had anything to drink in hours. Rachel laid her daughter down gently on my couch, tucked a blanket around her, and sat across from me at the kitchen table. She took a deep breath and started explaining. I only found out about you 3 years ago, she admitted, eyes on her hands. Daniel told me you'd run away at 17, that you cut off contact with everyone. I always thought there was more to it, but I didn't press him. Hearing your podcast, it floored me. I confronted him, and he finally came clean. I sat there, listening, trying to figure out if she was genuine. She seemed like she was telling the truth. I'm horrified by what they did to you, she said, her voice shaking. I pushed Daniel to reach out, but I swear I didn't know they were going to beg you for money. That makes me so angry and ashamed. She paused, rubbed her forehead. Yeah, I do need surgery, but we have insurance. We're okay. Your parents are the ones in financial ruin, not us. I asked her why she came here herself. She met my eyes without blinking. Because you deserve the truth, she said. Your parents have been telling everyone you abandoned the family. That you were unstable. That you stole money before you vanished. That they spent years searching for you. It's all lies, Ava. All of it. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. How can you be sure? I asked. She pulled out her phone and started showing me old Facebook posts, years of them. My mom asking for prayers to find her troubled daughter. My dad claiming I'd taken their savings. Updates about supposedly hiring investigators, checking shelters. All carefully staged to make them look like the victims. All dated long after they'd left me. Rachel set the phone down and looked at me, her eyes full of apology. I'm so sorry I was part of that lie, even without knowing. When I threatened to tell the rest of the family, they finally admitted it. They're terrified now because your podcast is making people question their story. Her daughter started to stir, rubbing her eyes and sitting up, a little girl with a head full of soft curls. This is Lily, Rachel whispered. She's 3. I'm expecting another baby soon. I'd love my kids to know their aunt. But only if you ever feel ready. No expectations, no pressure. Just, the door's open. When they left, I sat alone for hours, trying to process everything she'd said. Finally, I called Melissa and told her the whole story. She wasn't surprised. People who abuse others often rewrite the story, she explained calmly. They have to make themselves look like the ones who were hurt. She asked me what I wanted to do next. I didn't have an answer. That night, an email arrived from my dad. This time, the tone was different, angry, threatening. He said if I kept spreading lies about them online, he'd sue me for defamation. Claimed he had proof I'd stolen from them. Said he'd go to the media and tell everyone his side if I didn't take the podcast down and issue a public apology. demanded money for damages. My hands were shaking as I forwarded it to Melissa and then to Marcus, my lawyer. Marcus called me right away. "This is all empty threats," he said, steady as ever. "Truth is the ultimate defense against defamation. Keep everything. Don't reply. I'll handle it if they actually try to file, which I seriously doubt. Real lawsuits don't come with warnings like this." The following day, Daniel called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice was ragged and scared. "Ava, Rachel came to see you. Our parents are losing it. They're saying horrible things about her now. I'm afraid they'll do something drastic. Please, if you call me back, use Rachel's phone, not mine." I didn't know what to think anymore. I called Marcus again. He suggested we set up a meeting with Daniel and Rachel somewhere public, with him there too, just to hear everything out. I agreed, though I felt hollow inside. We arranged to meet at a little restaurant close to Marcus's office the next day. They came right on time, looking exhausted and anxious. Rachel had a bruise on her arm she kept trying to hide. Daniel wouldn't look me in the eye. Marcus introduced himself as my lawyer, which made Daniel flinch, but nobody left. We sat down, ordered coffee, and they started telling me everything. The story was worse than I'd imagined. My parents had been living off Daniel for years, moving in and out of his house, constantly borrowing money, criticizing how he and Rachel raised their kids. When Rachel called them out about me, my dad grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise her. That was when Daniel finally kicked them out. Now they were squatting in a motel, calling them nonstop, showing up at Daniel's work. I listened without saying a word, watching my brother fall apart as he admitted how they'd controlled him his whole life. How they'd convinced him I was the one who walked away. How he'd never dared to question their story. How he felt trapped and scared they'd hurt Rachel or the kids. Marcus asked questions about their finances, house deeds, whether my parents still had keys, whether they had access to any accounts. Daniel explained everything. Said they'd co-signed his mortgage, still had a name on his bank account from college days, had keys and knew all his passwords. Marcus took it all down, pausing every so often to glance at me. By the time it was over, I felt completely wrung out but clearer than I had in years. This was never just about me. Daniel and Rachel had been caught in their own kind of prison, different from mine, but still trapped. Marcus suggested they get their own attorney and handed them a business card. He urged them to update every password, rekey the locks, and move their money into fresh accounts as soon as possible. They looked exhausted but nodded, grateful someone was finally taking them seriously. As we were heading out, Daniel pulled me into a hug. This time, I hugged him back. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet anyway, but it felt like a start. A small acknowledgement that we'd both been hurt by the same people and might be able to help each other recover. Later that night, my phone lit up with a barrage of texts from my parents' numbers, rage, threats, attempts to guilt me into responding. I blocked them all without reading the last few. Then I called Rachel to make sure they were safe. She told me they were okay. They'd spent the night with friends and were already planning to get a restraining order. I was relieved, though a knot of worry still sat in my chest. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Rachel's voice was so panicked I could hardly make sense of her words. "They broke into our house," she cried. Asterisk, they stole Lily's baby pictures, our important papers, Daniel's laptop. They left a note. Family matters should stay in the family. My hands went cold. I told her to call the police right away and promised I'd meet them there. Then I dialed Marcus as I got dressed. By the time I arrived, a patrol car was parked out front, lights spinning. Inside, an officer was jotting down details while Rachel showed him what was missing. The place was torn apart, papers dumped everywhere, cabinets hanging open. Daniel sat slumped on the couch with his head in his hands, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. I told the officer I was family and was here to help. He gave me a skeptical look and asked if maybe they'd just used a spare key, if this could have been a misunderstanding. Rachel pulled back her sleeve, revealing the bruise my dad had left on her arm, and told him how things had been spiraling for weeks. He wrote it all down but didn't look convinced. He said there probably wouldn't be enough evidence to prove who'd done it. After the cops left, we worked together to clean up. Every time I found another empty shelf, it hit me all over again how deliberate this was. They'd even taken the extra car key. Daniel looked up eventually, his eyes hollow. "This is all my fault," he whispered. "I should have protected my family better. Should have seen the truth sooner. Should have looked for you before it was too late." I didn't disagree, but I didn't say that out loud. It wouldn't have helped either of us. Marcus showed up as we were finishing. He took one look around and said this changed everything. We needed a complete record of what had happened, photos, list of missing items, the whole thing. He said breaking and entering was serious, and we all needed to stay somewhere safe for a while. No one argued. Rachel started packing up bags. Daniel and I checked all the windows, resecured the doors, and talked about installing cameras. It felt unreal that we were making these plans to protect ourselves from our own parents, but we all knew it was necessary. As we locked up, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went pale. "We're watching you." That was all it said. I took his phone, snapped a picture of the message, and sent it to Marcus immediately. Then I looked at them and decided. "You're both coming with me," I said. My building had cameras and a doorman who already understood what was going on. They didn't hesitate. That evening, we sat in my living room eating takeout. Lily played with a toy Rachel had rescued from the house. We spoke quietly about what would happen next: restraining orders, police reports, changing phone numbers, maybe moving somewhere they'd be harder to find. It wasn't the reunion I ever pictured. Me sitting with the brother who'd believed I'd walked away, his wife who'd only learned the truth recently, and their daughter who hadn't asked for any of this. But in a way, it felt right. Like we were finally telling the truth out loud. Like we were trying to build something better from everything our parents had destroyed. The following morning, Marcus called to say he'd filed emergency restraining orders for all of us. We'd have to show up in court the next week to make them permanent. He'd also talked to a detective he trusted, who was finally treating this like a real crime. He told us to keep staying together until things settled. I agreed immediately. I called my assistant to explain that I'd be working from home until further notice. She didn't ask questions, just adjusted my schedule. I set up my guest room as a workspace for Daniel. Rachel and Lily took over the living room, building blanket forts and watching cartoons. It felt strange to have people in my space after years of living alone. I was used to my quiet, my clean kitchen, everything just how I liked it. But the sounds of Lily laughing, Rachel humming while she folded laundry, and Daniel tapping away on his laptop made it feel less empty. It felt a little like family. Not the one I lost, but maybe the one we were trying to make. That afternoon, my doorman called. He said a flower delivery had arrived. My stomach dropped. I asked him to read the card. "We know where you all are. This isn't over." I told him to refuse the delivery and call the police if the courier wouldn't leave. Then I called Marcus, who added it to our file. He said it would strengthen our case for the restraining orders. I didn't mention it to Daniel or Rachel. They had enough on their minds. Instead, I ordered extra groceries, cooked dinner, and spent some time playing blocks with Lily, trying to create something close to normal. But later that night, when the apartment was finally quiet, I sat in the kitchen alone. I let everything I'd been holding in come out: the fear, the rage, the sadness, and the tiny flicker of hope I didn't dare trust. I buried my face in a dish towel and cried so nobody would hear. In the morning, Rachel found me making coffee. She asked if I was all right. I lied and said I was fine. She didn't believe me. She sat down and looked me right in the eye. "It's okay to not be okay," she said gently. "I'm not either." Daniel cries in the shower. Lily keeps asking when we can go home. This is awful, but I'm glad we're going through it together. I studied her, this woman who hadn't been in my life a month ago. I asked why she'd come to me that first day, why she'd trusted me over the family she'd known so long. She sighed. "I always felt something was off about your parents," she admitted. "The way they told stories. The way they treated Daniel. Your podcast just confirmed it. I couldn't let my daughters grow up believing that abandoning a child was ever okay." We hugged, really hugged this time. It was awkward but honest. Like the start of something real. Maybe not friendship yet, but understanding. A shared promise to end this cycle once and for all.